don't necessarily look at the United States as a country that's full of tribalism, right? We look at Africa as a continent and the many different countries in Africa as a place where tribalism is rampant. But she uses her Nigerian upbringing to view how, to explain how she sees the United States. And in so one of the things that I find ironic in the book is that she goes on in the book. This is like mid point of in the book, right? So it's kind of further on, but she goes on talking about how black men, black American men, like lighter skinned women over darker skinned women. And she starts what's called a race blog, and she becomes a race blogger where she talks about race, and she talks about it in a way from a non-American black perspective is what she will always title the essays, like, this is my perspective from a non-American black. But what made it ironic is that while she's talking about black men in the United States, now mind you, I'm a black American, so when I'm reading the story, of course, I'm taking it as she's talking about me. She's talking about us. So while she's talking about us in the book, she's an African. She's talking about the African experiences, and in the book, she has this complicated relationship with America. On one hand, she admires black America from the standpoint of film, media, the Cosby shows, and the representation, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, the new millennium. She talks about how this made her proud in a way, and a compliment was like, oh, you have an American accent. Oh, Obenzi told her when they were in Nigeria in school, oh, you look like a black American with your braids like that. But then in the book, it's times where she basically, has her prejudice against the black Americans. And in the book, no black American ever does her anything negative or mean, but it's just like a social, stereotype. The old thing that everybody always says, that Africans don't like African Americans. Now, mind you, while she's going on and on about colorism and black men liking light-skinned women, in the book, she's dating a white man named Kurt. And Kurt is this blonde hair, blue eye, wealthy white guy. And she has a lengthy relationship with this guy. And I just thought it was so ironic, but that's how life is, right? Because she's talking about the black American and this, that, and the third, about how we worship light-skinned women and white women, and they're the top of the food chain. All the while, here she is in the book, the main character, dating a white guy, a rich, wealthy, athletic build, top of the food chain white guy from Potomac. And I was just thinking, because they're in the Maryland area, the DMV, and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, how ironic. So she gets accepted a visa to go to the United States. Due to the events in 20 years ago of like 9/11 and stuff like that, the male Nigerians were not being permitted to get visas to go to the United States. So the male character, Obenzi, he gets rejected from going to the United States, and instead he's smart, he's intelligent and everything like that, but he doesn't get permitted to go to the United States. Later in the story, his mom, who's an academic, she writes that he's her assistant, which allows him to get a 6-month educational or work visa to go to the United Kingdom. Then basically in the United Kingdom, he's staying in the Essex area, and basically it goes into what he went through. So all the while, Obenzi and Efemalu has a pact when they were young lovers that they would have a plan to be together. That was always the plan. And so I'm reading this from a guy's perspective because I'm a man, right? Okay, I'm reading this from the guy's perspective. Okay, so this is what made me keep reading. So they get she goes to the United States, and in my opinion, she switches up. I don't know how else to say it other than that. She switched up. You know, the plan got derailed a little bit because she has all these new opportunities, right? She's young, she's beautiful, she has things start to work in her favor. She struggles, she goes through some struggles, but then things start to work in her favor. Okay. Obenzi goes to the UK, he's struggling, right? And he's using other people's identity to work and things of that nature, and eventually that backfires. A guy starts extorting him, wanting him to give him basically half of his paycheck to work with his ID, and then eventually he was like, nah, I don't want to do it, and then the guy ends up snitching on him. Later on in the story, he gets deported from the UK and he's sent back to Nigeria. Okay. Now while she's in the United States, she's struggling. She's going to school in Philadelphia, and she's in the situation where she needs money. Long story short, she ends up getting into a pay-for-play situation with a white male, and for $100, read between the lines. So Obenzi is still messaging her, texting her. They're still kind of conversing. And then after this thing that she's experiencing, and I'm going to be real, I imagine that's very traumatic. I get it. So her character goes through this traumatic experience of being exploited and rent, bills, and all of this stuff. So she ends up doing what she has to do, and she sells her body. Okay. After that, she cuts Obenzi off for years. He doesn't talk. She doesn't reply to any of his messages, his texts. He writes her letters. He tries to get in contact with her. Nothing. Okay. Later in the story, her friend introduces her to some wealthy white people, and she ends up babysitting for the wealthy white people. And later on in the story, she meets the cousin of one of the wealthy white people named Kurt. Then they go into a whole romance, and she's traveling the world. She's now blogging and all of this type stuff. Simultaneously, while this is going on, she also meets another guy named Blaine, who is going to become like her African American lover. He's a professor at Princeton. Okay. So all of this is going on. And I'm reading this, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, that's how the game go, right? So Obenzi is fighting for his life, cleaning toilets in the UK, gets deported. He's going through all of this stuff. One of his cousins introduces him to a wealthy Nigerian, and then he begins his story where how he ends up becoming very successful, right? He becomes wealthy. Okay, Obenzi, that is. But it takes time, right? He's bouncing back from being deported. He meet this guy, and then the guy opened doors for him. Later on, Obenzi becomes really big in real estate in Nigeria. He stayed in Nigeria and he became successful. She's in the United States. She's not replying to any of his messages, his calls. And then every now and then, she would kind of touch bases with him and then disappear. Now, while I'm reading all of this, I'm thinking to myself, like, bro, what are you like, bro? Let her go. Like, it's over with, bro. Like, from a Black American perspective, the way our culture is set up, no means no. And without the explanation, like, I could understand something happened and then you ask a question and then you get an answer, but he went years without getting any explanation. So he does move on. He meets a woman named Kosi. They get married. They have a child together, and then later on in the story, she starts to transition. She finds out that Kurt is talking to other women online. Okay. Later in the story, she cheats on Kurt. All right. With some random guy that lives in the building with her that's into grunge music and, not bathing and stuff like that. So Kurt asks her, was the guy that she slept with white? And she was like, yeah. Kurt curses her out. They break up. Okay. Later in the story, she goes with Blaine. Now, what I see is the fact that, to me, Ephemeral in the story is she's comparing every guy that she meets with the feelings that she has for Obenzi. But at the same time, you're not returning any of his calls, his text messages. You're not talking to the guy. He doesn't even know. It's a lot of hypocrisy and inconsistencies with this main character, yo. And so I'm like, how are you? Every relationship she gets in, she's comparing them to this guy Obenzi, but at the same time, she's not talking to Obenzi. Okay, so she cheats on Kurt. They break up. She becomes popular with her blog. In the very beginning of the book, she meets this guy named Blaine on the train. And then later, she introduces how, their relationship took off. So she's at this convention where she's being paid to be there as a writer, and then she meets Blaine again that she met many years, like a decade ago, right? Okay, so he remembers her. They flirt. The next thing you know, things take off really fast with them, and they enter into a relationship. Okay, and then they're in a relationship for many years, pretty much. Okay, around the time where she's writing this is the Obama era, 2008, right? So her and the guy Blaine have differences because he's a social activist. He's kind of self-righteous. He's healed. He's black and beautiful, and she is like enjoying the ride. To me, she enjoys the privileges of the men that she's around, but I don't see where she's really down for the cause. In the story, it's like she's this attractive Nigerian woman, and she just, in my opinion, I kind of look at her like an anti-hero in the story. Like, she's extremely judgmental. She has all of these opinions about everybody else, about the world. But then in her real life, she's doing all of this fugazi things. Like, she's just a very inconsistent person. So her and Blaine reach a point of conflict where they have a friend. Blaine has an old black friend who works in the library at the university. One day, the old black friend, he's an older gentleman. He works security in the library at Princeton. The old black man is talking to another older black man, and he gives him the keys to his car to borrow. Another professor at the university calls the police on the security guard and basically accuses him of selling narcotics at the university. Blaine takes this as a racial issue, and so he fights to stand up for his friend. So he organizes a protest. He tells Ephemeral about it, and he goes on his mission. Okay, he asks her, or assumed that she would be at the protest. Simultaneously, while this is going on, it's another professor that's of a francophone African descent from Senegal or someplace like that, and she is in his classroom and she's like befriending him, and Blaine is seeing all of this, and he doesn't really like the other professor. So while this is going on, another professor is going to be leaving, and they're having a going away party the same day of the protest, the very next day. So instead of telling Blaine, hey, I don't want to do it, I don't have a dog in that fight, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, she lied to Blaine, and then during the protest, after she goes to lunch the next day for the going away party, she leaves the party and then goes back to Blaine's apartment and goes to sleep and go lay in the bed. Now, you guys, I was livid as I'm reading this, and I was thinking like, what? So Blaine is texting her like, hey, where are you? Hey, where are you? They're protesting outside the library about injustice and what happened to the guy's friend. So when he meets back up now, this woman is living in his apartment. She has all of the benefits that he's given her because he's a tenured professor at the university, and she's living with him. He's supporting her and he's opening doors for her and stuff like that. But when he asked for her support, she didn't give it. So that's why I say she's not a down person. Like the guys, Kurt and Blaine, the guys that she's dated in the book outside of Obenzi, she's not down for them. Now we could say, well, she's not down for them because they're not Obenzi. But to me, she's not even down for Obenzi. In the story, she stops talking. She has this relationship with the other guy. Well, a transactional situation with the other guy. She cuts off for Benzi, okay? Instead of asking Benzi for the money, instead of telling Benzi what she was going through, instead of telling people around her what she was going through, she tries to go solve her own problem. Then when it backfires on her, she cuts Benzi off. Okay, she's not down for Blaine. Blaine needed her help or wanted her to support him. She doesn't support him. Okay. She doesn't go to the protest. Kurt says that he never physically cheated. He was texting, right? Okay. Kurt is flying her around the world. They're going to Paris. They're going to these different places. He's bringing her to different social clubs. He wants to be with her, right? Okay. She's like, oh, this life is good, but it's just it's just not good enough. You're not Obenzi. Meanwhile, she's not even talking to Obenzi for years, might I add. Okay, so that's the climax why her and Blaine break up, because Blaine kind of sees like, she's not really down, but they stay together. Then when the Obama election starts coming up, she reads the Dreams from My Father book. It was his book. They find a new way to bond, and they bond over both liking Barack Obama. And then later on in the story, he gets elected, that they're riding a wave, that everyone's so excited, change in America and stuff like that. Okay. Later in the story, she decides that she's going to break up with Blaine, and she is going to move back to Nigeria. And she's moving back to Nigeria in reality to be with Obenzi. She messages Obenzi telling him after all these years that she's moving back to Nigeria. Meanwhile, this man got a wife, successful business, rental properties, he's successful. And I'm reading this and I'm just thinking to myself like, bro, this girl ghosted you, bro. This girl ghosted you, bro. She was dating other guys, bro. She was being flown around the world by this rich guy, Kurt. My guy. If Obenzi was my friend, I'd just look at him and be like, if you like it, I love it. But in my mind, I would tell him the truth. Hey, bro, she ghosted you, bro. And guess what? She had several relationships with other guys, bro. And you still want here's the thing about Obenzi. He had him a beautiful wife who was perfect in the story. She cooked for him. She was a beauty queen. She had their first child together. She was loyal to him. She didn't stress him out. He when the Filmaloo came back, he started looking for reasons of why he disliked his wife. Oh, I'm just not happy and stuff. And even one of his friends in the story, he pulls him to the side when he tells him, and he said, "Hey, bro, don't blow up your spot because the block got hot." Like Biggie Small said, why blow up the spot? Because we both got hot. Now check it. And also, like Biggie Small said, and this is where Benzi should have been a hip-hop fan, because hip-hop wouldn't have let him do that. Biggie said, and I get money, I guess you could say you the one I trusted. Who would ever thought that you would spread like mustard when Ish got hot? Bro, when it got hot, she spread like mustard, bro. She left you, dog. Dog, she abandoned you, bro. And you went... Okay, so... I digress. So at the end of the story, she starts this blog. She's finally back in Nigeria and stuff like that. And now she realizes, man, Benzi's rich. Benzi got different houses. He's a big man now. Like, oh, now you want Benzi. Man, this girl is so fake, bro. Man, Benzi meets up with her. They start going on different dates, and the story ends with him divorcing his wife, Cozy, because Cozy is not the love of his life, and Filmaloo is the love of his life. And that's just basically where the story ends. Like, one day he shows up at her crib and was like, yeah, I'm leaving my wife and my kid. I moved out and we could start. And I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, man, bro, you blew up the spot, bro. Like, this girl blew up your spot, bro. Meaning, what do I mean by blew up the spot? Meaning, like, she just brings nothing but trouble, man. And I would love to know what happened next, because I imagine, man, you going through a divorce, the successful business that you was building. If Filmaloo didn't help you build that successful business, your power, your status, she didn't help at all with that. When you got deported, she wasn't even there to support you. When his mom dies in the story, she wasn't there to support you. Kosi was there to support you when you went through that. Okay? So, it was a good book, and like I said, it's filled with the contradictions of us humans. We say we want this, we obtain this, then we want something else. It's almost like we can never be fulfilled. And another thing in the book, I like how through the different characters, it talks about the tension between African Americans and Africans. Personally, African Americans don't have any smoke for Africans. African Americans, and let's talk about the educated African Americans, right? African Americans, generally speaking, always look at Africa and try to put Africa on a pedestal. Then we get this for, you're romanticizing Africa. You're looking at Africa like you guys think that we run around in the, like, no, we know African is modern. You know what I mean? Like, we know it's cities like Accra and is cities like Cairo and cities like Nairobi, and is that Africa is a continent, like, or like just so much, like when we say Africa, in the West, we say Africa. So a lot of Africans would think like, oh, African Americans, they don't know that Africa is a continent, or they think that Africa is one big country. Like, no, we know it's not one big country, but we're referring to the landmass. For example, when people say America, when they're talking about America, outsiders are really talking about the United States. But America is actually a continent. North America, South America. So when people talk about America, especially if they're coming from the East, generally speaking, we know that they're talking about the continent of America. You dig? So I didn't like that he blew up the spot over this girl. To me, she wasn't loyal. I don't understand how somebody that's not loyal to you could be the love of your life. She wasn't loyal. I know she went through stuff, and I know that stuff was traumatic, but guess what, Obenzi? You went through stuff too, bro. You deserve love too. And because she cried some crocodile tears and she tells you that she's sorry, bro. Was she sorry when she was plane hopping and city hopping with Kurt? And she told him in the story about how she had been with other guys. I digress. So anyway, it was a great story, Americanah. The girl still ended up with a rich guy. But I bet if Obenzi hadn't been wealthy, she wouldn't have went back to him. She only wanted Obenzi because he was rich. And I'm sorry, Obenzi, whoever you are in real life, bro, she only told you because you was rich, bro. If she would have came back and you would have been poor, bro, she would have never even looked twice. In fact, in the story, this is the last thing I'm going to say. In the story, when he's deciding if he's going to divorce his wife or not, she's messaging Kurt again. She calls him Blaine again. I'm like, bro, this girl just trying to get in where she fit in. Whatever. So it's a great book. I say check it out. I give it a high rating, but the girl was fugazi in the book. It was hard for me to. She was the villain of the story to me. Like how I read the story, I'm like, man, this girl is a villain. But it also exposes female nature. Not all women, but how some women, their female is vicious. Women are vicious, especially when it comes to securing resources, and she talks about that. But hey, if I look at it from another perspective, hey, she's Machiavellian. The ends will justify the means. She didn't care that she broke up their family. She didn't care that she took this woman's husband. She didn't care that she wasn't there to see Obenzi rise and the grind that he went. She didn't care. All she cared about was herself. So that's the book Americanah, written by Chiamanda, Ngozi Adichie. I would read her book, Half of a Yellow Sun. I could see why it was given a lot of ratings, because high ratings, because usually we talk about guys being the playboy, but in this story, she's the playgirl. She's the playgirl, and it's hard to feel sorry for her overall. I mean, especially when it deals with how she broke up these people's families. It's like, is that romantic? Honestly, who knows? But that's life. This stuff happens every day. People cheat, people blow up their families, people do a lot in the name of happiness. And one thing I like is when his friend told him, bro, we're Nigerians, bro. We're not people from Europe or the United States. Like, we don't do that. We don't break up. He was like, bro, you got a young baby. You got you a beautiful wife who loves you, bro. You got your wealth, bro. Why are you gonna blow up your spot for some emotions or feelings because you didn't had some good with this other girl, bro, that you met in university, bro? Like, you're not thinking clearly, bro. But isn't that what love is? Love is insanity. Peace.